Hi everyone, and welcome back to the next episode of Gastronomy Games. Today, we're going to be talking about some techniques to build flavor in your vegetarian and vegan dishes using smoked tomato lentil stew with garlic cheese toast as a template. So without any further ado, let's get to the kitchen. Let's begin by talking about one of my favorite, lesser utilized vegetables, fennel. The fennel bulb is sweet with a complex anise flavor, while the leaves are herbaceous with a flavor similar to dill. Fennel is delicious and versatile, both cooked and raw, and can be a background flavor or the focal point of a dish. In this dish, we are using fennel instead of celery in our mirepoix because it holds up a bit better to the other assertive flavors in this dish. The stems are also edible, but are more fibrous, so we're going to save them for stock, while using the leaves as a garnish. We are going to dice it the same way we do our shallot, leaving the core intact. First following the vertical lines in the fennel before cutting horizontal layers, and finally cutting out our dice. Next, we're mincing our shallot using the same technique as our fennel. We want it relatively fine for better flavor distribution throughout our stew. Remember to keep your steel handy to realign your knife edge if your cuts are beginning to drag. Then the garlic, I'm cutting it into relatively thin slices, but if you'd prefer it minced, you should cut it the way you like it. Onto our carrot, we are going for a rough small dice. So first cut them into manageable pieces, then take them to boards, then planks, and finally to dice. For a complete overview on how to use your knife, be sure to check out our knife skills video. Next, we are going to smoke our Roma tomatoes. Start by taking the eye out before cutting an X on the opposite side. After they are smoked, remove the skin, and then blend them using either a traditional blender or an immersion blender, or if you don't have either of those, simply crush them as best as you can. They will break up a little bit more once they hit the heat, but pureed is the ideal. Heat a heavy bottomed pot or Dutch oven on medium-low heat before adding in a generous pour of olive oil. We are going to start building our layers of flavor by cooking our shallots with no color, also known as sweating them. Olive oil has a low smoking point, meaning it starts to break down and smoke at a low temperature. If we were to cook our shallots hot enough to brown them, we would lose the complexity of the olive oil. That being said, if your oil is not hot enough, your food will start to take on an oily, unappealing texture, so make sure you see a shimmer in your oil before you add your food and listen for a sizzle once it's added. When the shallots lose their purple color, add in your garlic and cook until they start to become translucent. With how thin we cut our garlic, this will happen very quickly, but for a visual cue, you are looking for them to become slightly see-through and less solidly white. This will both add flavor to our garlic, but also add flavor to our olive oil, which will in turn better distribute those garlic and onion flavors throughout our dish. Okay, we're looking pretty good, so we're going to add in a fat pinch of saffron before adding in the carrots. Saffron, like most spices, have both fat and water-soluble flavor compounds, so to get the most bang for your buck, start it in oil before adding the cooking liquids. Spices do burn, so this is not always a viable option, but whenever possible, start in fat, then add your liquids. When the carrots begin to soften, add in the rinsed lentils. It's always important to rinse your lentils because there is a water-soluble, bitter outer layer to them, which you want to make sure is removed and not in your dish. Then add in your fennel, the pureed tomatoes, the wine, about a cup of water, a few bay leaves, and some fresh thyme. If you don't have time to mince your thyme, you can throw it in still on the stem and take it out before serving. You won't have quite the same level of flavor distribution, but you will certainly still get a strong thyme flavor coming through. When determining when to add in herbs into a dish, a good indicator is the stem. If it has a woody stem, like bay leaves, like thyme, like rosemary, its essential oils are generally less heat sensitive, meaning you can add it in earlier in the dish, whereas if it has a leafy stem, like basil, like mint, you should wait until the last moment to add it. Knowing when to add in your herbs can make a world of difference. After all, you paid full price for your herbs, you should get full flavor out of them. We are going to let this simmer uncovered now to cook our lentils and our vegetables, and also allow all our flavors to mellow while we prep our toasts. We're going to start with our garlic. We're going to add some peeled garlic to a small sauce pot and barely cover with vegetable or another high smoke point flavor neutral oil. Then put on low heat uncovered to allow the steam to escape. If you are worried about calories, you can also just take a whole bulb of garlic, cut the top off, cover it in tin foil, and put it in a low oven until it's roasted, but I prefer this method because you also get garlic oil out of it. When the garlic is golden brown and your whole house smells like roast garlic, take off the heat and strain off your garlic oil. Cut your baguette into medium thin toasts, then squirt a bit of your fancy garlic oil onto your baguette before par toasting in a 350-degree oven until your toast is slightly browned. Don't take it all the way because we are going to add our roast garlic and cheese when we are ready to serve. Back to our stew, we are going to roll up our basil so we can cut it roughly before adding it. To our stew, we want to stack the leaves on top of each other before rolling it up and with a sharp knife cutting through. This is called a chiffonade cut. We want little to no green on our cutting board. Those are essential oils and we want as many of those in our basil, not on our board, as possible. Now it's time to taste our stew for doneness. If the lentils are to your liking, add in your arugula, fresh parsley, a generous pour of olive oil, and basil just before turning off the heat. This additional olive oil will give the stew a much more sophisticated texture, while also rounding off the potentially harsh flavors from the smoke and wine. We also want to make sure that this is done at the very end so that our arugula doesn't overcook, and as talked about before, so that our more delicate herbs do not lose their flavor and their essential oils. We want as much of that locked in as possible. With the stew now literally and metaphorically on the back burner, it's time to finish the toasts. Spread each toast with a smear of roasted garlic, then sprinkle on some fresh thyme and a grating of Gruyere, and put back in the oven until the cheese melts. If you don't want to pay up for the Gruyere, Swiss will work as well. Gruyere is a style of Swiss cheese whose nuttiness works very, very well with the sweetness of the roast garlic. Now we are just going to taste our stew to ensure we're happy with the flavor. If it tastes flat, add some salt. Too sharp, add in a bit more olive oil. Too heavy, add in some lemon juice or zest. Remember, this recipe is just a template to build off of. Never be afraid to explore different ingredients or flavor combinations to better fit your palate. I hope you had as much fun watching as I did making this video, and I can't wait to see you all next time. Happy cooking!